Panas Kamotnan, Kusay Mantu, Sao Mananan, Ka Minutisya, Wichahanan, Kana Sawa Mananan, Anus, Wabahe, Pegwa, Datu, Kisika.
I know many of you here, you're familiar faces, and there's lots of people I don't know. Thank you for coming out. I'm so excited you're here. I've been working with the Indigenous community members for a year and a half now on an Indigenous knowledge study of living with polar bears. The knowledge that we can gather from the elders, the knowledge holders, the knowledge keepers in the community. And many of you recognize me from Polar Bears International. I've been visiting Churchill seasonally for 13 years now, so it's wonderful to share this with all of you. I wanted to start with a few acknowledgements. This research is for my master's, but it's so much more than that. And this study began with a cup of tea in Helen McEwen's kitchen, who many of you know. And I'm so grateful for that time and that conversation. And it was through Helen that I met Georgina Berg, who became my co-researcher for this project, along with the guidance and advice of the Indigenous knowledge keepers every step of the way. And I'm so, so grateful for that. So we have, gone on adventures, we've laughed, we've cried, we've picked wild strawberries, we've bounced through rapids in a jet boat. We walked on a glacier, collected sea glass, sat in silence, and found her dad's signature on the rocks, which another special friend in the audience and I stumbled upon on a walk one day. So we had lots of hard conversations and beautiful conversations. And with Georgina and the Knowledge Keepers, they've just been an incredible support through this whole journey. So the Knowledge Keepers that have been along on every step, Katie, Florence, Patricia, Georgina Oman, Verna, I'm so, so grateful to all of you for your time, for the many hours of bannock jam, cheese and crackers, banana bread, sewing, crafting, ribbon skirt making, and so much more. And I'm also grateful to Mayor Spence for his blessing to conduct this research project from the very beginning and for helping me gather elders for coffee and to participate. I'm also want to give a thank you to Nakia. These beautiful maps over here and the timeline that was at the very front were all designed by Nakia, which is so special because not only is she an amazing visual artist, but that embeds the intergenerational knowledge into the data of the maps and the graphics created. To each participant, there are many of you in this room tonight. I'm so, so grateful. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your trust. And I don't take that lightly. And then to the whole community, there's so many people in this room that have supported this work in so many different ways, and I'm just so deeply grateful for my friendships and relationships here. I also want to thank my supervisor, who's an Indigenous scholar from the west coast of Canada, who suggested I use storytelling for this project, and you'll see how instrumental that became. And my other supervisor, Dominique, who traveled all the way from Montreal to be here with us tonight. And last, but certainly not least, all of my colleagues at Polar Bears International, who all day long were asking me, what can I do, what can I do, how can I help, who were brining roasts 2 days ago and cooking them this morning and helping run around and make all of this possible, and have been along on this entire journey with me. And a huge thank you to Krista, who many of you know, who couldn't be here tonight, the executive director of PBI, but she believed in this project and helped secure the funding that made it possible from the beginning. So this research has been a wild and wonderful journey, and I'm so grateful. So Matna, Marci, Marcicho, Ekosi, Thank you. So the first trip, I came to Churchill. I broke some of the rules in the research world because you're supposed to submit all your questions and stuff in advance to the ethics board, and I was like, I can't do that. I have to go there and make the question with the community. So I showed up, and it happened to be just before May 5th. And I ended up sewing and making ribbon skirts and hanging out with the Indigenous knowledge keepers all week long. And after hours and hours of talking, not about polar bears at all, we talked about polar bears. And I said, I'd really like to do a research project, including Indigenous knowledge and polar bears. What do you think? What should we do? So we came up with the research question together from the very beginning. And I, said, I had this idea of maybe storytelling instead of interviews. What do you think? And everyone was like, oh, that sounds like a nice idea. So we decided to do that. And we also decided to do sharing circles instead of one-on-one, which was really beautiful throughout the process. So you'll see how some of that unfolded. So we honed our research question. I came back last summer, spent a bunch of time here in the community, and we gathered around the table and we did the first sharing circle. We came up with these prompts, or the how to get the stories going, and we thought, what would be the best first question to ask somebody who has lived in Churchill their whole life? Do you remember the first time you ever saw a polar bear? And that was really the only question we had to ask, because after that, people would just get started. So we gathered with the Indigenous knowledge keepers, and we did the first sharing circle together. And then we said, what worked, what didn't, what do we need to tweak? And after that, we got a bunch of sticky notes, and we put them on the table, and drafted ideas of names of other people that might be good to include to gather knowledge in the community. And further, we put the sticky notes into groups of who might be a nice fit together. And what was hilarious is that we were like, should we include the younger generation and the older generation, or should we just do like elders? And we decided, no, we definitely want the young generation to have a voice in this. And I was like, wow, what about like Nakia and Antonina and Nikki together? And then no one told me, and we showed up for the sharing circle, and they said, did you know we're all related? Which was super fun. And we all agreed we were so glad that we chose a diverse generational participants for the project. So then we gathered with folks, and what was so fun is that one person's story would remind the next person of a story, and we really didn't have to say much. And Georgina sat through every single one of those sessions, except one, actually. We had a scheduling conflict, but with me, and we would take turns asking the questions, and I just learned so much. And it was a lot of fun, too. So then I took the recordings home, and I listened to all of them, and I went through, and I would hear things like walking on the rocks, and I would keyword that into the audio every time I heard it. Or the flats, go inside a building or a house. Oh, the dump, don't go on the pipeline. Trapping, the fur trade, tourism, polar bear alert, cabins, things like that. And so I would write, common threads, a word or a short phrase, after listening to everything. And it started to gather, and then I took each of those words and I wrote them on a sticky note, and I put them on the floor, and then I started trying to push them into little groups of what was similar, what was a pattern or a theme. And I kind of grouped them together till I thought they sort of made sense, and came up with 5 themes that sort of emerged in the research. And not only did I give them a name in English, but we used a quote from one of the participants that sort of embodied the theme. So the 5 initial themes were bear awareness, right? And for that quote, we said, don't go on the pipeline, was the one we chose. We chose together when I returned. Culture of coexistence, or a culture of living with bears. The quote is, it's just a way of life. About the bears, kind of more like biology, ecology. I love this quote. When you think about it, their entire existence relies on being sneaky. Industry and economy, which was really this sort of shift from the fur trade to tourism that so many of you have experienced. This quote, every Tom, Dick, and Harry's out looking for a bear. And then the last theme, management and research. And the quote there was, why don't they fly them south? So then I came back again. Late April, May is my favorite time to be here, by the way. Love bear season, but it's just so nice then. And gathered with the participants, and I had all the sticky notes and the themes, and we went through them. And we moved them around, and we changed them, and we got rid of some of them, and adjusted the wording to make sure that it was correct, and that we didn't miss anything major. And we added a few things in, sat, lots of stories, lots of coffee. So I, after that visit, kind of went home and made a fancy graphic from the sticky notes that has kind of all of that information. And then I sat down and I scratched my head, because what I didn't want from this project was to just produce a scientific paper that most of you all would never read. I wanted it to be something for you. And so with the audio that we recorded, I wanted to make like a radio show or like podcast. So you could actually hear your elders and your knowledge holders sharing the knowledge that they shared with me. And I got to this point and I was like, oh my gosh, what did I sign up for? How am I gonna do this? And mostly I was just not sure how to sift through all the information. So I took the sticky notes and I started moving them around. And so throughout the whole project, we decided from the very onset that we were gonna sort of look at things from the distant past, so like intergenerational knowledge, grandparents, great-grandparents. We ended up choosing to define that as information before the relocation of the Dene and the Cree and the closing of York Factory. So if we could get information from back then. And then we had the past, which was kind of that 1957, 1958, until the closing of the open dump, because that made quite a bit of sense. And then the present was from when the dump went from being an open dump to within L5 till now. And then we did a future visions piece with the goal of having information that can provide guidance moving forward, both for this community and possibly for others to look to. So I took all these sticky notes and I started being like, okay, fur trade, that goes in the distant past. Okay, let's see, another example would be a lot of the polar bear alert stuff went in the present, and then future visions, what people wanted for the future. And so that guided what would go into the podcasts or kind of like the radio shows. So the podcasts are built around the knowledge, organized in these themes by time period. And then I came back again this summer and we sat around and listened to podcasts, which was so lovely and so fun and so nice to hear everyone hearing each other's stories. And we also took some portraits, which you see here tonight. So with that, what we'll do now is listen to some of the podcasts together. So I'm gonna start with the distant past.
Maybe I could start. Our dad used to talk about his experiences trapping. And then he would always talk about the time that he was checking his traps. This was in April, I think. It was early April, I think.
March, maybe, eh?
The end of March, early
Talk
April.
about that there.
Yeah, he came across a mother and two cubs he was checking his traps. And, you know, as a hunter, as a trapper, he shot the mother and took the hide and the two cubs to the depot near a factory. He was talking about his experiences trapping, and that's what they did.
When he shot the polar bear, it wasn't intended to eat it or anything. It was just for the fur.
I think it was a combination of both
Okay.
dog food and
Oh, dog. Okay.
then providing for his family. Eh?
There were some in your factory they used to kill them. Yeah. They used to kill them for the dogs and that was it.
Yeah.
I guess you could poison wolves back then, eh?
Yeah,
You had Clone Lake, that's not
Okay,
that far.
yeah.
I mean, they're out there to Simeon. He put poison on our caribou and he got some wolf, but he also got one bear that time. So
Right.
imagine
Yeah.
with that poison going on, probably a few bears died.
well, that animal died of poison, another animal would eat it, he'd get it, and whatever, stuff like that. Maybe,
You could see one where they put a gun there and
Yeah.
they bait the bear and the gun
Mhm.
goes off by itself.
yeah,
Probably nobody knew about it, just because they had dogs and safety, I guess. I don't know.
So your question was about bears back then.
Yeah,
So they would have shot a bear, right? That was common.
yeah. Well, in those days, Dad used to see, or your dad himself, that you'd be traveling like that, a bear come across close to your tracks, you're gone. Now they come to you. No, you don't walk around out there without a rifle or something. You never know where they are. They be keeping in the grass. Some places tall grass.
We know for a fact because we have archaeologists who've come for many years now doing various digs, and they found a lot of these pre-contact tools and rocks with unique markings in them. And with these findings, they are able to send them out for further testing. And on some of the rocks that they actually cooked with, so they did heat that meat, and they found bear fat. So we know that the pre-Dorset Tool people were hunting and harvesting polar bears. It would have been in the early 1600s, so around 1620, I believe it was. The Indigenous doing their hunting and harvesting from, spring to that early winter. By then they would have been in the tree line at that time. And there wasn't contact with the Indigenous and the Jens Monk crew. So Jens Monk sailed into the Churchill River exploring, right? And not knowing the environment and where they were, the climate, they actually got iced in. So they were iced in across on the west side of the river, and they had to find a way to survive. So with that being said, there was a party of 60, I believe. And they sent their men out to find food, and this is when they actually harvested a polar bear. They killed a polar bear. And I guess not knowing how to properly prepare the polar bear meat, as everyone knows in this day and age, that it needs to be prepared a certain way because there's risks consuming different parts of the polar bear. And the Inuit have that knowledge. So with that being said, polar bear was hunted and harvested and not prepared properly. And the monk men consumed it, and many ended up dying from what they believe was trichinosis. And so, that was all due to ill-prepared meat and the hunting of the polar bear by non-Indigenous up in this area. And those who did not die from the consumption of that ill-prepared meat, they actually died from scurvy or malnourishment and obviously exposure due to the very cold winters we have here. So out of 60 men, 3 left and were able to return back to their area of Denmark. And those who did not didn't get a proper burial because they couldn't be buried into the frozen ground. And so when the Indigenous came out of the tree lines to start their spring harvest, they stumbled upon these men with strange clothing and strange colored skin. And that's where Churchill River gets its nickname, River of Strangers, because of Jens Monk's dead men. And that's the story. And that's such an important story of polar bears, right? as I sit here with you today, I can prove to you that my bloodlines run 7 generations, and that goes back to the Hudson's Bay Company men coming to this area and having children with both the Cree and the Dene women.
See, part of this is that the relocation, like closing the depot in '57. I think we were part of the last families leaving, Georgina's family and our family. So you're basically that was pretty much the loss of the culture that when you think about it, because you were relocated here. And then so now it's different, eh? Instead of trapping for a living, you're employed now. And then so you lose some of that. And then like Morris was saying, after you're 65, then it was time to go, and his interest was trapping again to show his boys how to trap. And
I come from a generation where my mom, my granny, they experienced the traumas of forced relocation off York Factory. So I lost out on a lot of traditional knowledge, but so did they.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I'm just like reclaiming that, researching that, and grasping at anything I can.
we lost all of that when we came here.
Yeah.
So
Nobody.
all about a new life. But
Saturday said you were born down the flats.
Yeah,
Is that
Yeah,
right? Eh?
yeah.
Wow.
Mom couldn't make it to the hospital.
Oh.
Yeah. And my uncles, the ones that was driving the dog team, well, I guess he brought her across, but he couldn't make it. Well, he had Fort Churchill was stuck with a waste for her to go, eh?
Yeah.
But I was born premature. I'm lucky to be alive. I was only like 4 pounds, I think, 3.5 pounds.
Wow.
I was in an incubator for about 4 or 5 months.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
Oh, there used to be 9 of us. Now there's only 3.
Did you all grow up in the same little cabin on the flats?
No, we're all separated.
Okay.
Residential school, which I hate.
Yeah.
Foster homes,
Mm-hmm.
adoption.
Mm-hmm.
Never, hardly ever thought about polar bear. And then growing up, the elders used to tell us to, you can't talk about, like, don't talk about eagles, don't talk about, like, they didn't like people talking like about animals or being mean to them and stuff like that.
Mm.
Because they're spirits, like that. Native people used to be able to turn themselves into almost any animal they wanted to, back in the day. I'm not saying it's not like that now, but it is, but it was more powerful, like it was more, I guess then they more depended on the medicine person, than they do nowadays.
When they were able to practice their
Yeah, freely.
spiritual practices more freely.
Yeah.
That one's kind of intense, but it's so lovely to hear the voices, I think. I've queued up another one with a little more comedic relief. So, for the sake of brevity, all of these will be available on our website to the community in perpetuity, so you can go listen to the whole thing. The past one, I think, is 30 minutes long, but it's so fun to listen to. So we're going to skip that for tonight for the sake of time. It talks a lot about the open dump, the military, the beginning of tourism here. It's very fun, so I hope many of you take the time to listen to it. Jumping forward to the present podcast, I have so many favorite moments, but this might be my 3 favorite minutes of the storytelling sessions we shared.
And one time she was barking and we woke up and it was actually at the front of the house. And it was trying to get into the dumpster at the apartment block. And we realized after that it was like an older, like experienced bear because we'd called Polar Bear Alert. They drove by and that bear hid from Polar Bear Alert. They recognized the truck. They like tucked back into the dark. And then once the truck passed by, they went to go look for it somewhere else. He came out and we called them back. They were like, it's hiding right there. Like it was right in between the apartments and the dumpster. And it's just cool to see like how smart they are in that way to like just know, like recognize a vehicle and be able to like make that assumption and associate it with that and hide.
And like my mom would just like wag her finger at me and she'd be like, no, you can't walk home on the pipeline. And that one's the scary spot for bears. And Jack and Donald are always parked up on there some mornings. Just call Jack and Donald.
Jack and Donald.
Jack and Donald.
Or
You see Jack and Donald, like I was walking one day and Jack had heard something down like farther down the road, but he like stopped me and he's like, hey, get in, I'll drive into town real quick and then I gotta go chase this guy out.
It's crazy because as much as we've dealt with bears, that second you're just like in panic mode. It's like you're fucking screaming and like I was literally screaming on the phone talking to Jack, and Jack basically said, it's like he knew who I was and he's just like, calm down, Katie. I can't understand a word you're saying. Where's the bear? It's like, okay, sorry, Jack.
It was my last year of teaching, 2018. We were looking out the kindergarten window, and there's Jack. He's got a bear in the ball diamond, and there's like fence all around it except one way out. And there's Jack walking around.
Yeah, all calmly.
With his gun, and he's saying, "You get out of here! You get out of here!" And the bear's running around, and he's doing the bases. And then a home run, and then away he went. Jack is so calm, like it's like this is just his everyday thing, eh? It was so cute. But it must have been a young bear because you know it went to first base and second base and third base and then home and then out. It's so cute.
That one was very fun. Jack and Donald came up 10 different times in the sharing circles. So I think we'll give it a try. The last one I would really like to play the entire episode. It's about 22 minutes long. And this is, all of the episodes are very important, but I think that this one is perhaps the most important. Because this is the community, the future visions from the knowledge holders from this whole project. So this is going through all the different themes, what people envision for the future of living alongside polar bears here.
It was really cool today, actually, of starting to notice at work, like, we'll be going across and our full crew, like the boat driver, the bear monitors, the tour guides, everyone is local, like, I've known them my whole life, and it's a really nice change, like, this is my 5th summer with Parks Canada, it's a really nice change seeing that over the years, because there would have been times where I might have been the only one from Churchill that went across.
That's what I really, I noticed that a lot too, is that when I was like serving and doing bartending during bear season, it was also always a lot of out of town staff that were kind of leading the groups and sharing the stories. And now you're getting to see more local people in any kind of aspect of tourism. Like having that knowledge there adds a whole nother level of conversation that you can have with guests.
Like I give tours of a stone fort from the 1700s, and like half the time people come over and they don't ask questions. They don't ask a single question about the fort. They literally just want to know like what it's like growing up here, like what I did for hobbies and stuff like that.
Tourism needs to be looked at more as an opportunity for young people, especially. I've always been asked by people, when am I going to get a real job? You know, putting yourself out there and you know, getting involved, you know, for your community and for your career, and you could make a really good living.
So we know the value of polar bears to to Churchill. We know it's significant. So that's why, it's important when we say, what's the value of tourism to Manitoba, right?
Tourism is big business, and that's what can part of reconciliation that can bring us back.
Respect, meaning that the Bears were here before all of us. You know, they were here before Fort Churchill was here, before this modernized version of Churchill that we sit on is here. So we built in their way, right? And so there's no reason why we can't coexist, and I believe that it can be done respectfully, and that means that the bear always gets the right of way, from one end of town to the other. Like, let it do its thing, let it cross its path, unless of course it's a juvenile bear looking for trouble, then of course there needs to be some kind of management there.
One of the things that we've noticed over time is that, with conservation, like they just seem to be overly aggressive sometimes, in terms of how they're handling bears or steering bears out. Sometimes you got to do things differently and improve on how you manage bears. So, like for instance, whether they're using a chopper to lead bears, sometimes it's, it could affect or injure the bear how they move bears. So, always got to be careful with that.
I still think we have a long way to go with promoting tourism in this town because, like a few years ago, I had this guy who was a South African filmographer or whatever, and he was on the back road and he was taking pictures of the bears along the coast there. And he said, the conservation came up and said, "Get out of here, get in your car." And, he's had a lot of experiences in Africa with all the wild animals over there. And he found out I was the president of Chamber of Commerce, and he came to my shop and he said, "Can I have a talk with you?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, it's not cool what's happening here in Churchill. And I go, "Well, what?" He goes, "Well, wildlife." He says, "I was out there taking pictures. I was a safe distance, from the bear. I'm not going to endanger anybody, the bear or myself." And he says, "Conservation came up and they basically threw me in my car and told me to get the F out of there. And then it's 30 degrees and they come over with a helicopter and they start chasing that poor bear. And that poor bear was so hazed that he said that bear was staggering. He couldn't run in the heat like they were chasing him." He said, "There's got to be a better way to have conservation here and have people monitored that they can have a safe viewing thing and leave the animal alone." So I think it's very important that we still work on those things today.
Causing more stress, and just the way that knowing the way people personally react to stress, it can affect the way we sleep, the way we eat, the way our day-to-day life continues. I can only assume that it's probably the same for different types of animals and species around the world.
When we came together as a working group, getting people together, it was to improve on the coexistence of bears. So making sure that, like conservation and how they're handling bears is improved and acceptable.
Yeah.
But then the bears too, they're flowing to this way, and Wapas Park is that way.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Yeah.
Why don't they fly the bears back to Wapas?
Why are they flying them between here and Arviat?
Yeah.
And they end up probably
In Arviat.
in Arviat. Like, fly them back to where they came from.
How the problem bears when they take them out of jail and then they fly them north. I would like to know, is that really the best idea? Because I remember when Arviat didn't really have a bear problem. And now they have a bear problem. Is it because we're putting all of our bears there? Maybe there's a better spot to take them, like maybe into the national park, because that's a big area where people don't live. I don't know what the rationale is for taking them north versus taking them east, southeast.
So on the on the Polar Bear Smart Working Group, one of the recommendations is that if you're moving bears, move them south, right? You move them north, you continue that, like Morris said, you're heading to Arvia. They know there's a dump there now. They know what's there. So it's just repeating what happened with the old dump that was here, right?
I know the next community north of us tends to blame Churchill for any bad bears in the weekend because they do, ship the bad bears that way. Should I guess?
We need to protect our tourism and get those bears flowing south.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's important to remember that, like, even though conservation, like Jack and Donald have been doing this for so many years, they're still like basically risking their life every time they go to chase a bear to keep the community safe. And it's important that we're able to give them the space to do their job safely.
Like, I was gonna say, it would be important to like tell tourists and like guests to Churchill that we set boundaries for Jack and Donald and for the bears, other than people thinking this is a show for them to keep taking photos of. To know that it's serious business and there's like boundaries that needs to be known. I wonder what it's gonna be like when Jack and Donald like actually retire. It kind of makes me worried. Like,
yeah, I was actually just talking with my coworkers that they should have like some sort of apprenticeship program. For the next Jack and Donald, it should be like local, like young local people following in their footsteps, because like realistically, like we see conservation officers like rotate through here like a revolving door, and out of everyone they're the two that stayed, and realistically a local is probably someone who will stay like they have for so many years.
I also think like exactly, just to kind of like add more to what you just said, Antonina, I think like, it's like a local invested interest. Like they have, like this person would most likely have the invested interest of like their community knowing how they need to keep safe.
It's even like sometimes I call Bear Alert and I'm like, I'm at Patricia's house. Like, I don't say like 57 Bernice Street. And I could tell when it's not a local who answers the line, because then they're like, where? And I'm like, 57 Bernie. I'm like, they'll know, just tell them.
Yeah.
I don't know about environmentally wise, if it's gonna, with the ice conditions. You see, tourism's probably just going to get bigger and bigger. I do see a lot of people from down south putting a group together, coming up, rent a van, go out, and there's somebody I've never seen before carrying a shotgun, or a group of photographers will get out there, and they get like super, super close, and then you're almost kind of watching them too. Or if somebody sees you with a gun, they say, "Oh, this guy's got a gun. I'm gonna keep going a little closer." But I think if they should try to regulate that a little more, because someone's gonna get hurt if they just free for all of it. Some sort of regulation.
So they do a good job of keeping us safe, but I think sometimes it's the bears that are at risk now, because they're being exposed to people, and
well, there's a lot of people out trying to see them.
Well, like tourism is blown up so much. It's crazy.
And then I guess also, like a lot of my friends eat polar bear meat. Like I've eaten it too. And it's very important for people up north, like as part of their diet. So I do recognize that some bears do have to be drugged, but I think that it should be minimized. And then the mark recapture work. My background's all in science, right? So I think that that probably is important work, and collaring can give you a lot of information, but does it actually have to be done every year? Or could it be done every 5 years instead? Because that's a lot of bears being drugged.
The collars and the tranquilizing and taking samples of, like putting them down to sleep to take more samples, more like year after year after year they do that. How many years they've been doing that?
And there's a few advocates out there that says, okay, my people still eat polar bear. That's our culture. Not for you to discriminate about it, but what you're putting into those is also being transferred to us.
So what haven't they found out in 1970 that that they're still trying to find out today? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I find that the researchers aren't really approachable, meaning that they have their mindset already on their research, and they're kind of like a tunnel vision. They don't really want to hear what other people have to say about it. They see through a mom and two cubs. So they tranquilize the mom. Now the mom, and they're not totally asleep. Now those two babies haven't been tranquilized yet, and they're traumatized. What happened to mom? They're just probably okay, she's waking up thinking, where's my babies? What happened? To me, it's still trauma. And of that trauma, what did you get from it? What information was so vital? When you do see collars, it stands out. And I said, you think that nowadays with all the technology,
Right.
they tag their ears, why can't that tracker be in its ear?
Well, you can track a dragonfly. They could put a tracker on a dragonfly that small. Why can't a tracker go on a polar bear that small?
Yeah.
You know what my dream problem solver would be is to have a sanctuary in Churchill where orphan cubs can go. You have a little area. I don't know where, but just a little area where your orphan cubs can go until they're old enough to survive on their own. Because it's going to go out onto the ice and,
Do what the polar bear does. Instincts.
Yeah.
And it's got to grow up just like a child. Child learns how to walk, falls down and gets up again and continue.
Rather than sending them to a zoo where they are stuck in a little compound all day. Or, the bears in Winnipeg are so close to the seals, that's like dangling a carrot in front of you. I'm sure they smell them. I don't know if they know they're supposed to hunt them because they've grown up in the zoo, but they must smell them and wonder what smells so good.
Let's look in that cheeseburger.
Yeah, and they're fed vegetarian food there.
Lettuce and
Yeah, are they actually being? Do they have they ever tasted what they're supposed to be eating?
Yeah. It's just basic. If you think about it, it's just like taking a child from their home and basically here, this is your new home. This is where you're going to stay.
And everything's foreign.
Yeah, everything's foreign. Nothing's going to be the same. You can relate to, residential school. Here's a piece of wildlife that was free. And everybody's saying, oh yeah, but they're giving those bears a fighting chance. Well, I would rather nature take its course.
What it comes down to is really thinking things through, getting the right people around the table and being proactive instead of reactive, because the end all is the polar bear always pays the price.
So if you look to the future for the bears, what do you think it's going to look like?
Well, with global warming, they're always talking about on radio, it don't look good for anybody, not just the polar bears, a lot of other animals,
I'd like to see that they're still here and we're still, seeing their beauty.
Making sure that with research and science and laws that the province puts in, all these acts, is that they are going to make sure that the Indigenous are around the table, because we have traditional knowledge from our grandparents, our great grandparents, our ancestors, and that's knowledge that you're not going to find in books. You have to come to the community. You have to talk and engage with the community.
Like just even in the school, I don't know how much information are they do in the school on polar bears, you know. I don't know, like even not like information not just for our visitors, but for our children who like to play outside in the evening, and you know, like you just never know when that polar bear will saunter through town, you know, and just to have that information for our children.
Yeah, so they do it like once a year, and they usually do it in October when it's safety month.
Yeah.
You know, but they should be doing it once a month.
Yeah.
Talk about
Just
what are the bears doing now.
repetitious, eh?
Yeah.
So I think that kids maybe don't hear stuff the first time they're told. So maybe it should be something that's done like at the beginning of the year in September, and then maybe again once more right before bear season.
Yeah, I think the tourists need to be educated more.
They do.
They need to learn.
Well, they used to have those bear talks for newcomers, and I haven't heard of any since before COVID. For tourists, for construction workers that come into town. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we just wanted to go have a refresher, maybe there's some new information that they could share with us, but I haven't heard of any of those in a long time.
If they think that they're big and clumsy and they can't run, they could run.
They can
really
run.
fast.
My nephew found that out. We were watching a bear outside our house when we stayed by Willow Park, and Ryan and Lewis were upstairs watching the bear, and conservation scared it, and it just bolted, and Lewis is like, "Holy smokes, Auntie, did you see how fast that bear can run?" I said, "That's why I always tell you, don't ever think you can outrun a bear, because you can't."
They're fast and they could climb. They're
Yeah.
really good climb. So those polar bear talks should
Yeah.
probably be happening more often, you know.
And part of that naturally is the whole aspect of education, making sure that, you know, that factor is important so that you minimize, you know, bear attacks and, you know, what's Churchill going to look like 30, 40 years from now?
I just think like, you know, education and safety for visitors, you know, some people come not purposely ignorant, but just there isn't a lot of resources ahead of time to kind of teach them things like, please don't go walking there all out on these random roads by
Mary.
yourself.
Yeah.
You know, Cape Mary is not a walkable road, although it seems very close on the map.
Even like if there's like plane announcements during like the busy tour seasons.
More general, like not only just about boulevards, but about this entire place. Like, there's so many dangerous things about it that we unknowingly have just like adapted to living with.
Yeah, I think like a lot of visitors get kind of sidetracked by the beauty of everything. They don't realize the danger that can come with it. And kind of like what Nikki mentioned before, like knowing that like the water here has taken lives before, even like recently, like just a few years ago. Like it can be scary. Like
One of the safety things could be that you don't lure a bear with food or leave food somewhere. You know.
it's like scary too, because in that moment they're thinking about tourism, but they're not thinking about like, say, the security guard at the complex who works till whatever time in the morning and has to walk home from work after by alone in the dark. Like,
Yeah, or the bears that are getting conditioned that if I go near town, there could be food or there could be that. That's why they don't feed the bears in the bear jail. Someone had asked, like, do they feed them in there? And I went, no, or they get conditioned to love Jack and Donald and love town when they should be scared of them.
Those signs have become a souvenir.
Right.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
Oh, I want one of those. Okay, I can get a badge over here with that same.
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
they become a souvenir.
Yeah.
It doesn't, to me, it doesn't look serious.
Right.
You know, it doesn't. Nobody's taking it serious anymore.
And then, you know, when are they going to take it serious? When there's something fatal happens? Because it's coming. It's definitely going to come with one of these tourists one of these days. Yeah, I said, why couldn't we hire somebody? Hire 2 people. One the train station and one the airport. So everybody that comes off the train, you give them a safety briefing, you give them all the information that they need to do their tour, and then, you know, it's just like a welcoming too.
Yeah,
To have somebody there, like an ambassador to Churchill, you know?
But I think if there was more, well, this day and age, you do a little video and TikTok, social media is just, you know, pump out a 1-2 minute video, just play it all the time, and you know, if you see it on your phone all the time, it'll eventually start sinking in. Maybe a little more, a little more social media stuff on it. I think polar bear safety.
We always think of what are we leaving, you know, our children, our grandchildren, and just like there's 7 sacred teachings, it's been said that you're always thinking 7 generations behind you, knowledge-wise, where you are present, and what it looks 7 generations moving forward.
We are kind of in a good direction now. I feel like better than before, but definitely like incorporating more locals and like local knowledge is key. I think a big emphasis is not only local but like Indigenous knowledge as well, like especially like the people who have lived here for years and years and like different generations of families, and even people like the Inuit who have a totally different relationship with polar bears than say like the Cree might have, and just like learning from the different perspectives, and that really ties into knowing what's dangerous and what's not around town.
It's very animals need to be treated with love and respect, you know, even though we eat them, right? Like we harvest them. But so we harvest our animals as quickly as we can, and we share, with Indigenous culture sharing. But with polar bears, I think that they're a real spiritual animal, you know, and they're part of our ecosystem, and I think that they're, you know, you can see, because Indigenous people, the connection to the land is through the animals, right? And we watch these animals, and we watch the polar bear rise, and we're all concerned about their future. And I think that it's up to us, you know, to make sure that we're doing our part, to make sure that the conservation continues, and that these animals are around here for my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren and my great-great-grandchildren, because Churchill's so special.
So the coexistence thing is pretty critical. So, and it's quite unique. So I think the community is pretty proud of being dubbed, polar capital world. But again, we've got to do our part to make sure that we're improving on it.
There it is. So hopefully it's fun to hear some of the stories in the voices. And I won't spend a ton of time, but this graphic, which is also up here, is kind of a bullet point of all of the future visions and recommendations from the knowledge holders.
I was going to say, as someone who's come from away, I would totally agree that when we arrive, we should get a briefing, because those things out there are super cute. And you see photographs where they got the dog and it's all cuddling. There was a guy who had all the dogs down the road and had the bear in cuddles. That's what we see, right? Nature is completely different, and it will be just a matter of time, someone said, before someone will die. I think the airport and train is a great idea. What I do think you could also do is you have to carry a stamp, something that says you've had a briefing, you've been told. From an insurance point of view, you're covered, because it will go wrong one day. Anyway, there's a comment.
I just wanted to take like a quick minute or two here just to really thank Katie for doing what she did with this project. I think she really set the bar pretty high on what a lot of other local, agencies, organizations, businesses need to do, is to gather more Indigenous, traditional, ecological knowledge. We have a lot of history instilled with us from our parents, our grandparents, and our ancestors from this land, and thank you, KT, for capturing that.
Storytelling has always been an Indigenous way of sharing our oral history, and what I absolutely love about this whole experiment is that she got our people together again, telling stories and sharing, and it felt really good. And I hope that it continues, and I thank you so much for that. That has just been so wonderful. And I have a gift for you here. It is an eagle feather.
Oh, because we know how much she loves feathers.
And just gonna read here. The eagle feather I'm sorry, I'm so nervous. The eagle has long been a symbol of honor, bravery, love, friendship, and mystical powers for the Indigenous peoples. It is believed that the eagle is the messenger from the Creator, and the eagle symbolizes the love that the Creator has for the Indigenous people of Turtle Island. The eagle is the most spiritually evolved of all the animals and the birds. It is a very sacred bird, and eagles have a lot of courage. It is considered a great honor to receive an eagle feather, and it represents a deep respect for the person that receives it. It is given to a person who will be protected by the Creator and guided and given wisdom. And in your future, I hope you will have lots of wisdom.
Eva, I just saw what's in the box.
Yeah, she made this for you, and I hope you wear it with pride for many, many years. I won't put it on you because I'm just shaking and I can't put it on anyway. I will put the box here and quickly.
Thank you. I knew I would cry so good tonight.
Great hug. Sure, you did a great job. It turned out really good.
Thank you.